You are a physician in Ramallah. What is actually happening in Gaza right now?
Israel is still bombarding Gaza. Israel violated the ceasefire 2,220 times. In 1996, they shot me with 2 gunshots while I was treating an injured person in my white coat as a medical doctor. At least 12% of the population of Gaza were killed or injured. What was slaughtered in Palestine was not only Palestinian children and not Palestinian people. What was slaughtered was international law as well.
The death penalty by hanging for Palestinians in the West Bank who are tried in military courts. The same does not apply to Israeli Jewish citizens.
Even in the apartheid terrible system in South Africa, they didn't reach that level. This is the level of fascism we are dealing with. If they kill two-state solution, which they have done, in my opinion, the alternative will not be ethnic cleansing. We will never leave our country. The only alternative is one democratic state in Palestine.
Hace apenas unos meses, Gaza ocupaba cada portada, cada informativo y cada debate político. Parecía imposible mirar hacia otro lado. Pero algo curioso ha ocurrido desde entonces. La atención mediática se ha desplazado. Nuevas guerras, nuevas crisis y nuevos titulares han ido ocupando el espacio público. Y la mera posibilidad de un alto al fuego, frágil, parcial y constantemente vulnerado, ha servido para instalar la sensación de que lo peor ya ha pasado. Sin embargo, para millones de palestinos, la realidad sigue siendo la misma. La destrucción, el hambre y la ocupación continúan. ¿Cómo hemos llegado a normalizar un nivel de sufrimiento que hace apenas unos años habría parecido inimaginable? En la Global Progressive Mobilization de Barcelona tuvimos la oportunidad de entrevistar a Mustafa Barghouti, médico, activista y dirigente político palestino que lleva décadas defendiendo los derechos de su pueblo desde los hospitales y las instituciones. Hoy hablaremos de Gaza, de Cisjordania, de la hambruna, de los asentamientos, del papel de Europa y de Estados Unidos y de qué ocurre cuando el mundo empieza a acostumbrarse a aquello a lo que nunca debería haberse acostumbrado. Como siempre, antes de empezar, hago un breve inciso para recordaros que No obstante es un podcast que estamos sacando adelante sin ningún tipo de ayuda o financiación externa. Si entráis en apoya.furor.tv u os hacéis miembros del canal de YouTube, desde solo €1 al mes podréis obtener algunos beneficios como acceso anticipado a todos los episodios, acceso a estos episodios sin anuncios y la posibilidad de hacer preguntas a nuestros entrevistados y ayudarnos a que esto siga creciendo. Ahora sí, empezamos.
No obstante, un podcast de Aime Román para FurorTV.
Today we're joined by one of the most prominent Palestinian voices, Dr. Mustafa Barghouti. It's an honor to have you with us, and thank you so much for making a little room in your schedule. UN Special Reporter Francesca Albanese and recent studies suggest the real number of Palestinian civilians killed by the State of Israel, directly or through the use of famine as a weapon of war, could be 600,000 or even more, and at least 30% of them could be children. Recently, the BBC has gathered evidence of more than 160 Palestinian children who were shot in the head by Israeli snipers in Gaza. You are a physician in Ramallah. From your perspective, what is actually happening in Gaza right now?
What happened in Gaza is nothing but a genocide. And that genocide, I know there are different numbers, but regardless of the numbers, at least 12% of the population of Gaza were killed or injured severely. 12% is a very huge number. People sometimes do not comprehend what it means to have 12% injured or killed. But if you apply it to the population of the United States, that would mean you are talking about 34 million people killed or injured in the course of 2 years. If you apply it to the population of India, you would be talking about 176 million people killed or injured. So it's a huge disaster what Israel has done. It's a crime that also affected thousands and thousands of children. And it's nothing less than a genocide. And in addition to the genocidal war against the population, they also conducted a genocide against schools, clinics, hospitals, infrastructure, everything. 90% of Gaza houses were destroyed. So they've created also a genocidal environmental disaster. And I think the worst thing that is that these war criminals are still continuing the genocide. Up till now, Israel is still bombarding Gaza. Since
Yeah.
the declaration of ceasefire, Israel violated the ceasefire 2,220 times. And they already killed 766 more people, including many children, since the ceasefire, and injured more than 2,300.
And more than 260 journalists have been killed since October 7th, 2023. The head of the Committee to Protect Journalists called it the deadliest war for journalists on record. Dr. Barghouti, Israel is not only destroying Gaza, but also those documenting its destruction. So, in that context, how should people in Spain or anywhere try to stay informed?
I think the problem is that the crime is so large, and sometimes it is really difficult to explain it all, and sometimes it's difficult to comprehend it all. But I think it should be summarized very clear. There are war criminals leading Israel, including Netanyahu, and these war criminals must be brought to justice. We have enough evidence that the ICC decided that there is a war crime. We have enough evidence to take these people. I mean, Netanyahu is now indicted as a war criminal. And every country in the world, especially European countries that are committed to the ICC convention, should help bring Netanyahu and the crowd that committed war crimes to justice.
Yeah.
But that's not enough. This Israeli criminal structure, which committed genocide, which is committing starvation of the people, which is also continuing now the attacks in the West Bank in the most horrible way. These people have to be sanctioned. The most important, effective way of stopping this terrible aggression and these terrible crimes is to impose boycott and sanctions on Israel as soon as possible by as many countries as possible.
Israel has recently passed a law allowing the death penalty by hanging for Palestinians in the West Bank who are tried in military courts. The same does not apply to Israeli Jewish citizens tried in civilian courts. To fund any kind of legal precedents, you have to go to apartheid South Africa or even Nazi Germany. How do you feel about this measure, and how are we not doing anything to stop it?
The death penalty law is another step in consolidating fascism in Israel. That penalty law, in my opinion, is a step to legalize and legitimize the fact that Israel is committing killing already of Palestinian prisoners. Since October 7th, 90 Palestinian prisoners died in Israeli jails, or we should call them hostages, actually. And they died because of torture, they died because of rape, they died because of starvation, they died because of deprivation of medical treatment. And in Gaza, we don't have the exact number or sufficient knowledge, but we know that at least something between 1,000 and 2,000 people were field executed. We have reports of field execution that took place. So this death penalty law, first of all, wants to legitimize what is already happening.
Yeah.
Second, this law is an indication, as you said, of how deep the system of apartheid is in Israel. Even in the apartheid terrible system in South Africa, the apartheid regime did not dare to say that if a black man kills a white man, he will be hanged, but if a white man kills a black man, he will not be hanged. They didn't reach that level. This is what Israel is doing. As you said, a Palestinian killing an Israeli will be immediately hanged, and he will have no right for proper trial, and he will be executed within 90 days, according to this new law. And second, we are talking about a law that will not be applied to Israelis who are killing Palestinians every day. But in addition to that, this is a sign of fascism. Who could imagine Israeli leaders, members of Israeli parliament, celebrating passing death penalty law with drinking glasses of champagnes in the parliament? Who could imagine that Israeli leaders, including men and women, hanging on their chests, signs of the rope that Palestinians will be hanged with. This is the level of fascism we are dealing with. And this level of fascism, and including passing this law, would not have happened if the world reacted in a different way to the genocide that happened in Gaza, if the United States government did not continue to support this Israeli fascist regime and even participate in their war crimes, if many European countries did not had followed the very good example of Spain, which took the necessary step to have military boycott of Israel. Unfortunately, many governments in Europe still support Israel with military equipment while it is committing genocide and in a way becoming complicit with the war crimes that are happening against Palestinians.
And you were yourself detained and beaten by the Israeli army in 2002. How do you sustain a commitment to non-violence after being a direct victim of that same violence?
I was arrested many times and I was beaten and they broke my knee in 2002. And in 1996, they shot me with 2 gunshots while I was treating an injured person in my white coat as a medical doctor. But this never broke my belief in the power of nonviolence. I'm not saying, I never said that Palestinians don't have the right to struggle in all forms of resistance according to international law. International law allows Palestinians to use all forms of struggle as long as they respect international humanitarian law and international law. But I maintain this belief because I believe in the power of popular resistance. I believe that I believe in nonviolence because it's the most effective way, in my opinion, that will lead us to freedom and will allow us to get rid not only of occupation, but of the system of apartheid and the settler colonial system that Israel is imposing on us.
In July 2024, the International Court of Justice ruled that Israel's occupation is illegal and described the situation as apartheid, ordering the evacuation of settlements. And of course, as always, Israel ignored the ruling. The thing is, when the highest international court makes a decision and nothing happens, can we still today speak of a rules-based international order?
No, international law was what was slaughtered in Palestine was not only Palestinian children and Palestinian people. What was slaughtered was international law as well, and international humanitarian law. And it continues to be slaughtered. The International Court of Justice ordered Israel to dismantle settlements. They are building more settlements. Just recently, they passed a new resolution to build 34 new settlements. The level of land confiscation, illegal confiscation of Palestinian land is unprecedented. It is growing so fast. And more than that, they are allowing illegal settler colonialists to attack us in fascist groups. They are like fascist gangs, very similar to the fascist gangs that Hitler used to organize in Germany, in Nazi Germany, and to the fascist gangs that Mussolini did in Italy. This is the same level. Terrorist settlers gangs who conduct 10 to 12 attacks on Palestinians every day, burning houses, burning cars, and most recently started shooting people. Since the war started with Iran, the aggression on Iran started, Israeli settlers killed 10 Palestinians, and they continue. And that's why I think there is a very important need to make an outcry demanding immediate sanctions on Israel by European people, if not European governments. If governments are not doing it like the Spanish government, the people of Europe should do it. And the people of Europe should pressure their governments, because what is at stake here is not only the future of Palestinians, it's the future of everybody. It's the future of the world. It's whether the world will have international law or not.
Donald Trump returned to power promising to end wars, yet has escalated conflict in the region, including with Iran. How do you assess Trump's foreign policy in the Middle East?
Horrible. It's horrible policy. I think we've just heard Senator Murphy and Senator Bernie Sanders and Mamdani, all of them speaking about the dictatorship of this Trump's regime and about the authoritarian system he is trying to create. And I think I agree with them. In our case, Trump has been responsible for shifting billions of dollars of weapons to Israel and bombs that were never used before against Palestinians. And now he's joining with Israel and aggression on Iran, creating damage to all Arab countries, also in the Gulf, and creating huge damage to the world economy. I think we've never seen such a level of narcissism and self-centeredness being in the hands of such a powerful regime. And that's why I do share the opinion of what we what we do here today in this convention, which is that we should all be unified. We should all be, and I am proud. I'm proud of being a Palestinian because every speaker who spoke today, when they spoke about progressive coalition and the unity of progressive forces, each one spoke about Palestine and the freedom of the Palestinian people, because I think the Palestinian issue has become the heart of progressive movement today and the heart of care for people's rights and human rights and children's rights and women's rights.
Yeah. Spain has recognized the Palestinian state and described the situation in Gaza as a genocide and positioned itself as a key European voice in this issue. From Ramallah, how is Spain's role perceived? And is saying no to war enough? Are we doing enough?
I think Spain has the largest appreciation on the side of the Palestinian people today, with South Africa, with Brazil. But Pedro Sanchez have become the hero for Palestinian people, for his courage, for his solidarity, for his clearness, and for his powerful courage in front of the bullying of Donald Trump and some others. I think Sanchez in this conference has managed to pave the road to take a leadership position of all progressive movement. And we greet him for that. And we greet the Spanish people for this thing. I think for Palestinians now, the image of Spain and the role of Pedro Sanchez is so much appreciated. And people feel the honesty of his positions.
To what extent are Arab states really acting as allies of the Palestinian cause?
I think, unfortunately, the Arab countries are suffering, the Arab people are suffering from the poor performance of their governments, partially because some governments have, as you know, although a small minority, have normalized with Israel against the interest of their own people and against the will of their own people. But in general, people feel there should be more unity between Arab countries in defense of Palestinian cause, but also in defense of their own people. What people realize now is that Israel and the Zionist fascist regime in Israel is a threat not only to Palestinians. The leader of Israel, the war criminal Netanyahu, came out openly saying that he supports the vision of Greater Israel. What is Greater Israel? It's an Israel which would annex not only the West Bank and Gaza and Jerusalem and all of Palestine. It also would annex the whole of Jordan, the whole of Lebanon, 2/3 of Syria, half of Iraq, 1/3 of Saudi Arabia, and half of Egypt.
Yeah.
From the Nile to the Euphrates. This is their vision. And ironically, not only Netanyahu said that, but even the American ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, supported that vision. So the Arab countries and the Arab people must understand this is going to threaten their future themselves. and they have to take very powerful stand, not only to support Palestinians, but to defend their own countries and
Yeah.
their own people from the hazards of this expansionist Zionist project.
Benjamin Netanyahu has been facing corruption charges since 2020 with repeated delays to his trial, and even now proceedings are being postponed again under the pretext of war. How do you read the internal dynamics of the Israeli political system today?
I am very sorry for what is happening in Israel, because I think even the Israeli public doesn't realize what's happening, because what you see is fascism, not only in the Israeli government, but unfortunately fascism that is spreading among the people. Something we didn't see since fascist regimes in the Second World War. And what you see in Israel is when 90% of the population support the war and support the attack on Iran, when the majority support a law against the establishment of Palestinian state, when the majority support this terrible fascist law of death penalty, it passed not only because the government parties supported it, but also some opposition parties. So in reality, we don't see hope because we don't see real peace opposition in Israel. There is no peace camp, unfortunately.
Yeah.
There are good people, but they are very small minority. And that's why I am frank with you, change will not happen in Israel from
Inside,
within.
yeah.
You have to remember that Yitzhak Rabin, who didn't even agree on a Palestinian state, but signed a peace agreement with Palestinians, the Oslo Agreement, which Israel shattered. Even Yitzhak Rabin was assassinated by a Jewish extremist.
Yeah.
And he was assassinated because of Netanyahu's aggravation against him in Israel. So if I was an Israeli, I would be very worried, because this fascism in Israel is not only killing us Palestinians, it is eating up the Israeli society from
Self,
within.
yeah. Yeah.
And that's something that happened in other countries before, but the Israeli public is not learning from it.
You've been one of the key figures of the Palestinian secular left for decades. What is the current state of Palestinian political leadership in the face of what you describe and I describe as a genocidal project?
We have two problems in Palestine. I mean, and I am very clear and very self-critical. We do not have the unity we need. I've struggled for 20 years to establish Palestinian national unified leadership, and I will not stop doing that, because unity is a key factor to our success. But unity cannot happen without agreeing on a strategy to end not only occupation, but the whole system of oppression, and to struggle against it. And unity is conditioned by democratic reform internally, a true democracy. We didn't have elections since 21 years. I ran against the existing president in 2005, and I came second. And we were hoping we will have next elections in 5 years. 21 years without elections, that is not acceptable. And that's why internally we need to democratize, internally we need internal democracy to achieve a proper and strong unity so that we can succeed in our struggle for freedom. At the level of the public is unified. The problem is not with the people. The problem is with politicians who don't understand the demand of the people for democracy and for unified leadership. And of course, that is also a result of the external pressure that is exercised by enemies of the Palestinian people, or by people who don't want to see Palestinians succeed in achieving their freedom.
Before you leave, before we end the interview, we told our community, our followers, that we are with you, and they left a few questions that they want you to answer if you have a little bit of time.
Please.
Las preguntas de la militancia.
As a doctor, what do you believe are the first actions that international humanitarian aid should address throughout the Palestinian territory?
We have 100 medical teams in the organization I lead, which is called Palestinian Medical Relief, who are treating about 200,000 people in Gaza every month. But there are many other organizations doing marvelous work. But they are really exhausted.
Yeah.
We lack medical medications. We lack medical equipment. Not a single medical equipment was allowed into Gaza since the war started, 2.5 years. The whole of Gaza does not have a single MRI that is functioning. So we need pressure on Israel to allow the supplies of medical equipment and medications to reach our teams there who are doing heroic job. We need pressure on Israel to release the 90 health workers, including many doctors who are in Israeli jail. And we have lost many very good specialists who died in Israeli jail because of torture. So we need the release of these health professionals. And we need pressure on Israel to allow not only journalists to come to Gaza, but also medical teams, which they are preventing now.
Yeah. How do you think the international community could contribute to stopping the ongoing genocide in your country?
The international community is doing a great job at the level of the public, but it's not enough.
Yeah.
Israel will not stop unless it is subjected to sanctions like South African apartheid system was. Today I heard Ramaphosa. He spoke greatly about Palestine, but the world must do to Palestine what it did to South Africa. Boycott, divestment, and sanctions. This word, BDS, is the only thing that will change the course with Israel.
And the last one, what future do you see for Palestine? How do you maintain hope? And what impacts do campaigns like the Global Summit Flotilla have there, even if they don't come to fruition?
Flotilla is a great solidarity movement. I was part of the flotilla in 2009. We managed then to reach Gaza. We challenged the Israelis, and we reached Gaza 4 times before they destroyed the boat. I was on that boat. I was with Mairead Maguire, a great woman from Ireland. Now we have thousands and thousands who are joining the flotilla, and there will be another big, huge flotilla very soon. I am in touch with them, and I think this is a great job and great work. And it should be encouraged, and people should participate in it in as much as possible, because it also exposes the crime that Palestinians are subjected to, and exposes the fact that Gaza has been under siege already for 20 years. I was in Gaza when it was put under siege in 2006. And since then, it has been forbidden from having any source of normal life. So I think the flotilla is a great idea. It's one form of solidarity, but there are also other forms that people should join in support of Palestine.
Dr. Barghouti, thank you so much for being with us. I think there are very few people who can speak about Palestine with the authority that comes from a lifetime of commitment. And yeah, thank you so much for your time and for your work.
Thank you. I think I didn't answer one part of your question. Let me answer it.
Yeah.
You asked me about the future.
Yeah.
With what Israel is doing, they are killing the possibility of a Palestinian state. So what the message should be clear to everybody. If they kill two-state solution, which they have done, in my opinion, the alternative will not be ethnic cleansing. We will never leave our country. The only alternative is one democratic state in Palestine, in all of Palestine, with equal rights for everybody.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your words and for your clarity and for being here with us and making a bit of room in your schedule for us. And thank you so much.
Thank you.
A menudo se nos presenta el genocidio contra el pueblo palestino como un conflicto interminable, como una suerte de disputa ancestral condenada a repetirse para siempre, y no como una decisión política motivada por intereses económicos y coloniales. Hoy, con Mustafa Barghouti, hemos hablado de hospitales destruidos, del hambre utilizada como arma de guerra y de periodistas asesinados por intentar documentar lo que ocurre, de colonización, de desplazamientos forzados y de una ocupación que no se limita a Gaza, sino que avanza también en Cisjordania, mientras buena parte del mundo mira hacia otro lado. A lo largo de la entrevista ha aparecido una pregunta incómoda una y otra vez. ¿Qué valor tienen las normas internacionales si pueden incumplirse sin consecuencias? ¿Qué significa hablar de derechos humanos universales si esos derechos dependen de quién sea la víctima y quién sea el agresor? ¿Y qué ocurre con el orden internacional cuando las sentencias de los tribunales más importantes del mundo pueden ser ignoradas sin coste alguno? Son preguntas que exceden a Palestina, porque lo que está en juego no es solamente el futuro de los palestinos. Hemos hablado de Netanyahu, de Trump, de Europa y de los países árabes. Hemos hablado de intereses geopolíticos, políticos, de impunidad y de dobles raseros. En última instancia, la cuestión sigue siendo extraordinariamente sencilla. ¿Qué valor tiene una vida humana? Y si estamos dispuestos a defender ese principio cuando resulta políticamente incómodo hacerlo. La solidaridad no consiste únicamente en sentir compasión, sino en negarse a aceptar que determinadas tragedias se conviertan en mero paisaje. Termino recordando, una vez más, que no obstante es un proyecto independiente y autofinanciado. Así que si queréis ayudarnos a seguir abordando estos temas, podéis hacerlo desde solo €1 al mes en apoya.furor.tv o haciéndoos miembros en YouTube y obtendréis ventajas como acceso anticipado a estos episodios, acceso a los episodios sin anuncios y la posibilidad de hacer preguntas a nuestros invitados. Ahora sí, hasta la próxima.